Hi, I'm Tom Stapledon, and I've got another talk and slideshow here on behalf of the Friends of Williamson Tunnels. This time it's going to be about the discovery of the Merseyflex Chamber. Merseyflex was a factory that stood right alongside our headquarters where Joseph Williamson's house used to stand. It was there for many years, and it was demolished in 2019. I think it was February 2019 they were pulling this down. So that's a picture of what the Merseyflex factory looked like when it was just about to be demolished, I think, before they'd actually started. This is our headquarters here, Joseph Williamson's house site. And the Merseyflex factory, or what lies below it, had always interested us. It was an area where we believed there were going to be more tunnels to be found. You can see on that photograph there's the frontage of Joseph Williamson's house. We're right next door to this. And here we are now. It's almost gone. The building has been pretty much demolished, just that bit of frontage standing. And when we look across the wall from our site, you can see it's been completely gutted. A couple of side walls are still standing. In fact, these side walls are left over from Joseph Williamson's own houses, this wall here and the one at the far end, which is right alongside the railway cutting. The remains from Joseph Williamson's houses, numbers 46 to 52, used to stand on that piece of land. Now, just want to show you the 1880s tunnels plan as drawn by the Territorial Army, which I've mentioned many, many times. But these plans have been very useful to us. As we used to say earlier, we didn't know whether we could trust them to be accurate in any way, but we've definitely found them to be well worth having. Now, looking at this particular plan, Mason Street runs through here, and this green rectangle is the site of Joseph Williamson's house, and it's what we now occupy as our headquarters. And the red triangle to the right of it is where the Merseyflex factory stood, which has just been demolished in February 2019. Now, from that point onwards, we didn't really have much idea what the Liverpool City Council intended to do with the piece of land. They own it, but there didn't appear to be any particular plans. So we started working on them to try and get permission to have a dig, because as you can probably see here, there is what appears to be quite a large chamber under that land. Various other things going on, passages or tunnels running across from that land, across our land, and onto the magnet land on the other side of us. We have hopefully we still have the Great Tunnel under there. There's the triple-decker tunnel, the one that was cut in half by the railway. And it even appears to show a tunnel running underneath the street and then forking off in two different directions on the other side. We didn't know whether we could believe this or not, but we wanted to. And anyway, we wanted to find out. So we worked on Liverpool Council, and it took us a while, but we did eventually get permission to have a dig on the site. They gave us a week. But by the time this came round, it was September. And when they did finally give us the permission, they said, you can have a week, but you'll have to get on with it pretty sharpish, because they were about to sublet that piece of land to Morgan Sindall's, the developers of the new Paddington Village development. They needed it as an overflow car park because there was a terrible shortage of parking places for all the people that were working on those sites. So they were due to move in and get the keys and use that site as an overflow car park. And we had just 1 week in September, they told us. And so we had to make our plans fairly quickly, make decisions and take measurements about exactly where we wanted to dig to get the best value from our week. And of course, hiring a digger for a week is quite expensive too. And we needed to try and get our money's worth out of it. So bright and early on the Monday morning of this week in September, here's our digger on site. Mason Street's running along here on the other side of this fence. And this wall here is the side wall of the railway cutting, the Edge Hill to Lime Street railway cutting. Hop over that wall and you'll drop 80 feet down into the cutting. And the area we wanted to look at was here, quite close to the cutting, where we thought that that large chamber lay. That was the most important place that we wanted to dig. There were other things we wanted to investigate as well, but that was the major one and where we headed for. So bright and early on the Monday morning, absolutely wonderful. We hit the spot straight off. The first trench that the digger was asked to dig, moving inland from this point, which is right under the fence, next to the pavement on Mason Street, digging this way, he uncovered that tunnel that runs under the street. We were absolutely amazed. In fact, it really is amazing that the thing has still been in existence from the 1830s, probably. All these years with great wagons and things trundling over it. There have been no sags, no collapses in the road. I'm quite sure that the council and everybody else had no idea that it was there, but there it is, looking quite intact. You can only see half of the tunnel. There's a wall here covering the other half of it. I'm not quite sure what that's about, because these are basement rooms here, but the tunnel itself does appear to be intact, and it's just below the level of the pavement, so close to road level. It's unbelievable that it's intact, filled entirely with big lumps of stone and other rubble. We didn't dare touch it. We didn't want to be responsible for causing a collapse. So we were glad to see it, but we left it as it was and didn't try pulling anything out of there. During the day, the digger moved further and further back away from the road, dragging material out and uncovering several rooms, which were obviously basement rooms below one or other of the Williamson buildings on the site. I think it would have been number 50 or 52 at this point. And we even found some remains of a tiled floor under this section here. So we knew there were basement rooms. So that was a great day to start the week off. And the next thing we wanted to do was to dig another trench at right angles to this one. That would be going that way from right to left. And we hoped that that one would cut right across the top of the large chamber that we were looking for. So day two, the digger's there. He's opening up an enormous great hole, massive piles of rubble piled up on all sides. This is all just made ground. It's all been dumped in there, demolition rubble, thrown into basements, which is the usual thing wherever we've been looking and uncovering Williamson tunnels. There's no virgin land around here at all. It's all been backfilled with one material or another, but mostly building rubble, I think. So he's digging here at about best part of 4 meters down, cutting this trench across at right angles to the one from the day before. And at this point, nearly 4 meters, I think, horrible scraping noise and smoke and sparks, and the digger driver thinks he's hit the bedrock. Very understandable. But one of the lads standing around the hole watching thought he saw some movement. And so we asked him to just poke around a little bit more, just as well, because it turned out it wasn't the bedrock. It was a big lump of stone, and it was covering a hole. And when he dug a little bit further, this hole appeared. Another fabulous day. We couldn't have been more lucky. We not only cut right across the top of the arch of this chamber, we cut across at the exact spot where there was already a small hole in the roof. That hole was really a little bit too small for anybody to squeeze in through, but it allowed us, once we'd got the digger driver to pull enough material away from all sides to make it safe to go down, it allowed us to drop, one of the lads dropped a camera through at arm's length and took a couple of photographs looking in both directions. And fortunately, there's a chamber here which has been filled almost to the roof, as nearly all Williamson underground spaces have been, but not quite filled to the roof. And there's perhaps 18 inches of space between the top of the spoil and the roof of the tunnel. There's just about room to squeeze along. And in fact, you could see from end to end. He took a couple of fabulous, Kyle here, this lad who took the photographs. I don't know how they turned out so well in the darkness, but he took photographs looking in both directions, and he saw both ends of the chamber across the top of the rubble pile. The next thing was to drop down the laser measure, and the laser measure told us that in the direction of the road, that's going that way, it was 11 meters. And in the other direction, inland from the road, it went 2 meters. So we now knew that the chamber was 13 meters long. Absolutely brilliant. The next thing was to drop down the gas meter, gas analyzer, to check whether there was breathable air or any nasty gases that would stop us going in there, and everything appeared to be clear. Now, this hole really was a bit too small for comfort, but we had a good look at it, and we made the decision that it would be possible to break out just a couple of bricks. I think they were broken out from here, to enlarge the hole just enough so shoulders would go through. So that's what we did. And now the hole is about 40 centimeters by 50 centimeters. Doesn't sound a lot, but it was enough to get through. The first person to go through there is our Steve, and he's there just below the hole. He's quite a short person, though it was easier for him to get in than for many of us, because there's so little headroom below that you need to be about as supple as a snake to slide in. And he's there now with a short shovel, and he's pushing material away from just below the hole to make it easier for everybody else to get in. And of course, once you're in, you've got another problem, because getting out again is even harder with so little headroom below there. But once we'd moved a bit of stuff away, it did become easier. Even for people like this. She always has to be in on the act. But you can see that there isn't very much room there for anything but a pair of shoulders to get through. It's not comfortable, but it was worthwhile going in. So after that, we all went in. We got as many of our volunteers who wanted to see it to come round and have the opportunity to go inside there and have a look, because we knew we'd only have it for a few days. So here we go now inside. That photograph is looking towards the rear of the site, away from the road. And at the point where we come in through the hole here, this back solid sandstone wall is only 2 meters away. And in the other direction, you're looking towards Mason Street. You're looking there towards a hole that's been smashed through the roof about halfway along the chamber. And you can see, obviously, that it's been used for pouring all this material down. Apart from this little bit of black, cokey, cindery stuff, probably the remains of a fire, which has gone down right at the end. Everything else in here is raw, broken sandstone pieces. It's quarry waste. And there's the second hole in the roof, and you can see the pinnacle of material that's right up from the hole. And they've only stopped when they couldn't really get much more in here. They've used these two holes to pour the stuff down. And that hole is just a meter or two away from the end nearest to the road. So we were lucky enough that it wasn't comfortable, and you wouldn't want to be in there if you were claustrophobic, but there was room enough to slither on your belly from one end of this chamber to the other. We took lots of photographs, of course, and we took measurements. And there were one or two places where there were dips in the top of the spoil heap, and you could maybe get up onto your hands and knees. But for most of its length, you really had to slither over the top of this stuff. And it's bright red, clean sandstone waste, looking just as it would have been as it came out of the quarry. It hasn't discolored in any way. It's been poured down here. Then this place has been sealed off, and it's stayed that way since the 1880s, I believe. I believe this material has all come from the opening up of the railway cutting between 1880 and 1885. And because this chamber, however deep it is only about 5 meters away from the railway cutting wall, it would have been useful to the railway people, the London and North Western Railway, as a depository for as much of their waste material as they could get in here. No doubt, lots and lots of it had to be carted away. It was carted away in railway trucks on temporary lines in the cutting. But wherever they could get rid of it locally, I suppose they would do. And we have seen another Williamson chamber that was appeared to be filled with very much the same material. So almost certain. But it's the fact that it's so clean and bright and red. It's as if it's only just been quarried out yesterday. Amazing. One unusual feature of this chamber is the construction of the roof. This is an awful lot more work than building a straightforward brick arch, which we're familiar with in Williamson's work. Excuse me. But in this case, it's a combination of stone blocks and brick. And you can probably see there is a row of stone blocks. And there is a row of stone blocks. And here is a row of stone blocks. And in between, you've got several rows of brick. Now, to my mind, that must be an awful lot more work than building an arch simply out of brick. We've come across arches, Williamson arches built out of stone. I think that's a lot of work as well. Brick is probably the simplest, but to create an arch like this, it's not consistent all the way along over all areas. But I mean, in some parts, it is quite definitely rows of stone blocks with several rows of brick in between. Much more work, but I can't imagine why Williamson did it. But that's Williamson. He was keeping his men busy, and building it quickly or building it cheaply perhaps weren't the most important things for him. So we've proved that this is, we know that this is 13 meters long. It's a substantial size. We didn't manage to work out the width. The spoil doesn't fill the whole space. There are gaps down the sides there where they haven't pushed it in. And we did try slithering down over the side of the spoil heap to see if we could see the base of the arch where it sits on the bedrock. But unfortunately, we couldn't get low enough. In fact, I felt as if I was going to slip down there and need to be pulled out by my feet at one point, but we didn't get low enough. So we couldn't actually accurately judge the width of this chamber. But the best guess we've got is it between 6 and 7 meters wide. And it's definitely 13 meters long. So quite substantial. What we don't know, of course, and what we'd love to know is how deep it is. This might be as deep as the banqueting hall. It might be deeper. Who knows? I don't think they would have bothered to use it as a dumping ground for this waste material if it hadn't been a deep chamber. But of course, we're not going to know until Liverpool City Council allow us onto the land and give us permission to excavate it. I'm afraid that's for the future. We'd love to be given a corner of this piece of land, fence it off, have enough space to put in a pair of gates and put a skip on site, and then get in there and start emptying it. And who knows what we'll find when we get down to the bottom of it. We know there are other things leading off in a couple of different directions. We found the tunnel going across the street, and it looks as if there should be one running across this piece of land and across to the Williamson house site. Whether that's a low-level tunnel or just a near-surface passage, we have no idea at the moment. But it's one more thing that has proved the army plan to be quite accurate. And so we have great faith that we'll find more things because of the army plans. So that's about all I've got to show you on that. Unfortunately, at the end of our week, we just had to bury it again. We've clearly marked the position where our hole is. We know how to go straight back to it when we get permission. But we had to fill the whole lot in and make the ground good and walk away. We were actually there for a little bit more than a week. It was a couple of days more by the time we'd cleared up the ground above. But it was so sad to have to bury it and walk away. But at least we found it. We know it's there, and we can go back when we're given permission. So that's just about the story of the discovery of the Merseyflex Chamber. And we can't wait to get back. So thank you very much for watching.